Do you think perhaps we should produce some kind of like a playing card type size thing to give them a guide and say, well, when you go in there, look at this and this and this, you know?
Well, I think from what I've seen, I mean, when I went to my first meeting, which had 8 different agencies,
right,
there were 3 members of the Royal Military Police there. Now, in my time, I left in 1998, that would never have happened. Things have clearly moved on in both the military and civilian police. There's a lot more training, a lot more understanding. But again, the heat of the moment, it's very difficult when they turn up, particularly when a force puts a particular policy. And again, the most serious incident I had was in Scotland with Lanarkshire Police. That drove me to the point of suicide. You know, I had a rope round my neck, and the only thing that stopped me tipping that chair over was the thought of my eldest daughter, actually, and her views, although I don't agree with them, her views on suicide was what stopped me tipping that chair over.
Yeah.
So I just didn't feel I had anywhere else to go.
Are you able to elaborate? I mean,
yeah. So basically, this was the same partner that I'd been abused by in England, and we'd been moved around the country. We'd had that incident with Wiltshire Police, and many other incidents. You know, we eventually moved to Scotland. We were in a really small village in the middle of nowhere. Again, it's more isolation. Now, we'd gone there for a specific reason. She had given up her youngest son, who'd gone to stay with his grandparents in Scotland, because she had some issues of her own that she was trying to deal with.
That wasn't obviously your son. That was somebody.
No, this was with her husband, and they were separated. So we moved to Scotland. I moved with her to help support her, despite her parents begging me not to go. They, in their words, you know, she'll destroy you. And I said, well, if I don't stand by her, who's going to? Yeah. And that's because I knew things that had happened to her.
So you trying to play a chivalrous part. Like.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote a piece yesterday actually, and I said, well, you could say that was a bit arrogant of me to think that I was the knight in shining armour who's there to help her. But I just thought, you know, I loved her, and I thought if I stand by her, one day she's going to realise that not all men are there to use her and take advantage of her.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that day never really came. So there were some serious incidents, but eventually, I mean, as I say, we could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
There was a turning point incident, which led to social services becoming involved, which is the story that I use in most of my talks, because that was the turning point. But the more serious incident happened after I left. I eventually did leave, got my own flat, but it was in the same village.
I see.
Literally 3 minutes away from my partner. And I was getting my life back together. I had a flat, I had a job, I was seeing my daughter at weekends. So things were coming together for me. And I think to a degree, as the abuser living down the road, that she didn't like that.
Yeah.
You know, that I'd taken back full control. She asked if she could come round one weekend to talk things over. And stupidly I agreed. Now I had my daughter for that weekend, who at the time was only a few months old. She was asleep in her cot. My partner came round, started to drink heavily, had taken drugs.
Oh, right.
And I could, over the years, I'd learned to see the pattern.
Yeah.
Okay, so there'd be the happy person, would then move into the overtly sexual person, even if there were other people around, and then the mood would drop. Then it would be nasty, you know, demeaning comments, and then the violence. So I learned to recognise that pattern over a number of years, and on this occasion, I was in my own flat. I asked her to leave. When I asked her to leave, she absolutely went crazy, attacked me. Probably the worst, well, it is the worst attack that of all the years we'd been together. Bearing in mind we weren't together at this point. So she attacked me, beat me around the face. I dialed 999, got through to the operator. Whilst I was being attacked, they could clearly hear the distress in my voice. I was begging them to send the police around. She was trying to wrestle the phone off me, did wrestle the phone off me, beat me around the face with the phone. Then she made a bolt for the room that my daughter was in. My daughter was asleep in her cot. I blocked the doorway again, just a constant attack, being punched, clawed at. She managed. I mean, really, I was panicking because of previous experiences.
Yeah.
I just thought, I'm going to get arrested here. You know, this is going to go badly for me.
Yeah.
I kept thinking that, but at the same time, I wanted to protect my daughter. She managed to grab hold of our daughter, but I then took her by the wrists. I managed to get hold of her by the wrists, which was A, to protect me, B, to protect my daughter, and I dragged her out of the bedroom by her wrists. Got her out, managed to close the door, again, managed to get the phone back, dialed 999
was your daughter
again.
distressed, was she?
Yeah, at this point now she was awake, she was screaming. The attack continued. I managed to dial 999 again. There was more grappling for the phone. And this went on for some time. And eventually I just made the decision to run for it. So I bolted for the door and I locked her in the flat with my daughter.
Oh, see, right.
So that she couldn't take her. She was really drunk.
Yeah.
She'd taken drugs. And I didn't want to take in our daughter because I didn't think she'd be safe. I dialed 999 again. Eventually the police turned up. One stayed with me, spoke to me whilst one went into the house, and then the other guy went into the house. I stayed outside. We were both arrested. We were taken to the police station with our daughter, who was obviously handed over to another officer, and we were interviewed separately. And whilst I was being interviewed, I could hear voices, and I actually asked her, I said, "Has she been released?" "Yes, we're releasing her." Because I could hear her. I could hear our daughter being handed over.
Yeah.
And she left. And I was sat in this interview room, not much bigger than this, to be honest. I'm shaking now just talking about it.
Must be pretty tiny.
And he said, "Yeah, she's been released."
Yeah.
And I was told that because, again, this is down to policies, he said, "Your partner has kept her mouth closed and she's not agreed to answer any questions. And we've agreed to release her with your daughter. But you have admitted taking hold of your partner, ex-partner, by the wrist and dragging her out of the bedroom." And I went, "Yes, but that's only to protect my daughter and myself. But you've admitted taking hold of her by the wrist and dragging her out of the bedroom." Now I had my face, I said, "Are you going to take photos of my face?" Because I was all marked up round here, where I'd been beaten around the face with a phone and fists.
Yes. Well, that's disgraceful, isn't it?
So,
Absolutely
to cut a long story short, I was charged with assault. I was kept in the cells overnight. The following morning, I was put in handcuffs in a prison van, driven to court. I was taken up into the court, where I was bailed for 5 months and banned from going near my partner and my daughter.
Yes, but unfortunately, I've come across not the same story as yours, but similar things like that before. And this is the outrageous thing that.
It was absolutely.
I mean, at the end of the day, whatever you're both adults, but the child themselves is put in extra risk because of that stupid decision.
Well, one of the things I said to them was that, "Can you please speak to social services?"
Yeah.
Because when I'd had the turning point incident and social services had got involved, she admitted the turning point assault, if you want to call it that, where she attacked me whilst our daughter was choking. She was only a couple of months old. She'd been given some medicine and she was but violently choking, almost like she had a blockage. I was the only one who knew any first aid, so I said, hand her over. And she handed her over to me. Well, she screamed at me first, then handed her over. And I was trying to clear her airway, our daughter's airway. Obviously, that's an incredibly stressful situation.
Yeah.
And And then out of nowhere, I was punched in the face whilst I was trying to clear my daughter's airway.
Yeah.
It knocked me to the side. Instinct, I pulled her into me, and then the punch had just kept coming.
Yeah.
I'm kind of going backwards and forwards, but that was off the back of the pregnant.
But the astonishing thing is that the police had physical evidence of your injury.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
just ignored it.
Yeah, and
It's
she
just
had
incredible.
she had some I believe some reddenings to the wrist.
I've seen
and that was
that
it.
with other people.
But there's the voice recordings as well, where I was literally screaming down the phone. I'd had to flee my own flat, and there was a history because on that time when she attacked me, whilst I had our daughter in her arms, and social services got involved, they interviewed her, and she admitted the assault to them. Whilst I never pressed charges, maybe I should have done, but I didn't. That admission was the first time really I got any support from anybody, because the woman from social services was fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, she was really fantastic. She said there's two kinds of abusers. There is the one that puts their hands up and says, look, I know I've got a problem. I want to work to sort this out.
Yeah.
And then there's the second. And she said, your partner's the second. She sat here in front of me and said that it was nothing to do with her whatsoever, and that it was all to do with me.
Yeah.
You know, that I was provocative, I was this, I was that, I couldn't keep my mouth shut, etc., etc. So she said, you need to go and pack a bag and leave, but you won't, I can tell you won't. And I think at the time, on average, she said it takes 30 assaults before somebody will start to make that move. But anyway, the bottom line is the police never went and spoke to social services.
No.
In the 5 months
It's just
from being bailed to the court case,
no, they didn't do their
they
job,
never
really.
spoke to
They
them.
never investigated properly.
No, I had a really good solicitor, and on the day of the court case, we didn't even go into court. The case was dropped prior on the morning of the case.
Any decent solicitor would rip it apart, wouldn't it?
Well, the case was dropped because they said there's no case to answer.
No.
That's the term they used. There is no case to answer.
Yeah.
And you have to bear in mind that in those 5 months, I put a rope round my neck and seriously considered ending my life.
Yeah. Why did emotionally? How? I mean, I know it's painful for you to go back to that. What actually made you decide you were going to do that? You know, what? I mean, you've explained the story, but how did you actually feel? Did you feel despair, hopelessness? What?
Yeah, absolute hopeless. I thought, because of the way I'd been treated over previous incidents, I thought this is only going to end one way. I'm going to go to court in 5 months, and I'm going to be found guilty, and I may go to prison. I've spent, I think it was 3, maybe 4 years of countless incidents, and it's just the whole injustice, and you just think, I've gone through this, I've suffered this, and she is being treated as the victim. She gets to sit back, gloat. She's got our daughter, no problems. Nobody's pointing the finger at her.
No.
I live in a small village in the middle of nowhere. You know, everybody knows everyone else's business. I'm being portrayed as the aggressor, as the perpetrator. Yet I had to go through all of this. You know, did the 999 calls not stand for anything? Does the, admitting social services?
It was just really.
Well, again, in defence of the police, from what I learned, it was just domestic abuse is a big problem in Scotland. It's a huge problem, and that again the forces are trying to find ways to tackle this, and one of them is for numbers. If we get a case like this, we need the numbers sorted out. Yeah. So somebody needs to be answerable as to why these officers came out.
That's entirely the wrong way of approaching it. Because you're sort of like you're going on economics, if you like, instead of justice.